The PDA is an organisation which promotes professionalism with students and pharmacists. That's important for me as a student, as it helps us students remain professional at all times. It encourages us to stay on the right path and allows us to have perspective on the situation and possibly not be constantly frightened of the prospect of fitness to practice meetings. The most powerful benefit for students would have to be the promotion of professionalism to the student population. I think that's primarily the most important thing. It keeps us out of trouble. It promotes development within the student population, and I think it's very important for us as students. One of the primary benefits of the PDA is providing free professional indemnity insurance. Professional indemnity insurance is very important for us as we go out into the workplace. We're at risk of sometimes making mistakes, and we need to be protected. It's of course of benefit to everyone, but especially to us students, as it prevents us from having any financial liability for anything that we may do. The PDA provide fantastic support during fitness to practice meetings to everyone, not just students, I feel. It's very important for their involvement to make sure the process is coherent and follows all the rules and guidance of fitness to practice, and follows what's truly important for the fitness to practice meeting, which is to ascertain professionalism and make sure that the student is competent and professional in going into the outside world. I think the PDA have a great and important role there for us students. The first thing a student feels is guilt. This is usually followed by the thought of what's going to happen next. Often is the case that we go into fitness to practice meetings where our fitness is judged. The PDA have an important supportive role there in supporting us students and making sure the whole process is structured, and the real heart of it is to make sure that us students remain professional. We do the right thing. It's often the case that we deny something has happened, even with overwhelming evidence, and it's really, really supportive and helpful to hear sometimes that the PDA are here to sort of set things right, almost, I'd say. Most students believe they will never get into trouble, and hopefully for most students that would be the case. But I can say from personal experience that it's inevitable for students at one point in their career, even in their student life, to get into trouble. It's what happens afterwards. The PDA are there to give advice, guidance and insight into helping a student get through this. It's the fear factor, it's everything about the fitness to practice. Even the words might send a chill down most students' spines if they're involved in it. It's incredibly easy to get involved into a fitness to practice, and I think it's really important to have the structure in place to fall back and get someone to support you during that. This is what the PDA are there for. It's there to make sure you say the right things, be honest all the time, and in essence make yourself more professional as a student. I've gone through this process, and I must admit my level of professionalism has definitely increased after joining the PDA. I have good insight on how things work. They've gone through hundreds and hundreds of cases, and they know their stuff. And I think it's really, really important for all students to be involved in that. The PDA help shape my future in two ways. The first way is the development, the personal development I get from attending conferences, attending more local PDA run events. Being in front of other people promotes professionalism for us as students, as we're the subject of being judged by other students. So by virtue of that, it enhances our communication ability, enhances our ability to discuss things which a lot of people may not be comfortable in talking about. And that leads me on to how the PDA might be helping my future in the long term. The PDA are there promoting the professionalism of pharmacists, enhancing the responsibility which pharmacists may have in the workplace, outside the workplace. Increasing the clinical importance of pharmacists being with the patients and championing my rights as a pharmacist. This involves making us more prevalent within hospitals. The PDA have been championing that for a very long time, including and up to what they've been doing in Scotland recently, which is helping pharmacists become more clinically minded, and this has led to a huge bolster in our confidence as students, as we know what our future may hold for us. As a student, we all sit here and wonder what the future of pharmacy holds for us. With everyone infringing on our role currently, it's quite difficult and quite worrying for us sometimes to think of the future. Do we work in a small community pharmacy selling, little plasters, or do we become more patient-centric and push towards providing care for patients? It's good to see the PDA are pushing my agenda, which as a future pharmacist, I want to be away from dispensing and putting medicines in bags, and more towards feeling important and taking a role inside the patient healthcare plan and seeing the patient from start to finish and making sure that as a master of medicine, I get to take care of all their pharmaceutical needs, and they hopefully would have an enhanced view of us pharmacists in the future. And I would like to see the patients come back to us, not asking us how much a sandwich is, but what the side effects of XYZ medicine is. One important point for students is differentiating between what they call their personal life, which is what they work on in their world of Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and you name it, these new things, and what they regard in their professional sort of student life, how they portray themselves within a university. And a student is often under pressure, sometimes from housemates, sometimes from their own peers, to use social media in a personal sort of fashion, promoting things that might not be professional sometimes. Calling oneself a professional drug dealer is one I hear very often. The PDA do give talks on how to bring about these two separations and bring it into one almost professional lifestyle, which can work both ways and have leeway for both their professionalism and also their personal life. There's no point stopping Twitter and stopping Facebook. These things are going to exist almost indefinitely, as far as I see it. However, it's being able to work within that threshold and still enjoying a personal life. As our life becomes more and more public, the PDA come to universities and they highlight to us students the importance of merging together our lives and not keeping it so separate and so individual. As a student in the first year, I do recall a scenario where I was working in a community pharmacy and the community pharmacist there at the time, it was winter, December time, and the pharmacist told me to sell more hay fever tablets. They were underachieving in the hay fever department. So she pushed me as a counter assistant to sell more cetirizine, loratadine, and possibly not talk about the side effects either. I find that very disagreeable now, sitting here, but at the time I was under pressure to find experience and build up my CV in a professional manner. So it's very difficult to differentiate on what's right and wrong. The PDA come into this aspect of my life by addressing my worries. If I knew the PDA existed at the time, I would have asked them whether it's okay for me as a student pharmacist to be doing that, whether I have any liability on that matter, and whether I'm able to call the professionalism of my pharmacist to question. If, in retrospect, it would have been quite great to call my pharmacist's professionalism into question. Had I known the PDA existed, I probably would have asked them for advice, and they are always open for advice with their helpline, amongst other facilities they offer.
My understanding of PDA is a non-for-profit organization, and as the name refers and explains, is an association that tries to defend pharmacists in different aspects. We've got some insurance policies as well as loads of lobbying, which from different aspects, in case of if it is about regulations and GPHC or code of conduct, fitness to practice, all different aspects which relates to students as pharmacy students studying in university may face to different situations that not necessarily it was their fault, or as a result, PDA is there to support them. And if it's about rules and regulations that PDA feels they are not in favor of pharmacists, and they should be more considerate in any aspects, in any way, PDA would be lobbying and in contact, should necessary even with Parliament, to make the right changes happen for pharmacists. One of the examples of lobbying was the P medicine, and PDA tried to lobby against this suggestion that P medicine should be in reach of customers or patients, and they should be changed to normal GLS-like meds. But we have done some petitions and tried to deliver our point of view at my level, where it is representative levels in pharmacy schools. And in Bath University, I have talked to pharmacy students and heard their point of view about this, and of course we delivered their point of view to our senior committee, and this was implied in the petition, and tried to make it happen the way we think is appropriate. We try to make sure, or PDA as a team tries to implement the right actions that GPHC or regulatory body would consider all aspects, as well as patient safety and the controls that pharmacists could put in place to safeguard the patient's life. In reality, you know, it's very important. In the end of the day, it's very important for any pharmacist to make sure their patients are getting the right care, and we want to make sure we do it in the right way. PDA has been always actively trying to support the pharmacy students and pharmacists, so they would understand how important it is to prioritize patient safety rather than commercializing and trying to sell your product. Because patient safety is your safety as a pharmacist, so you want to make sure that patient is getting the right care. And of course there are lots of pressure in some areas, and pharmacists or pharmacy students at placements might be under loads of pressure for selling the products rather than prioritizing the patient's safety. So we want to make sure everyone understands that the pressure is very unnecessary, and we want a safe environment for as pharmacists, which consequently would lead to a safe environment for patient to come into. We try. We have been supported by the senior committee at PDA, so we to go to our schools and make sure the pharmacy students are aware of the dangers and risks, and we try to educate them in the best way possible, so they could avoid any problem or risk or any danger for their career to come up. And if something like this should come up, there are supports provided by the lawyers and PDA that we provide the support. So it's not only actively that we support our students, pharmacy students, and the pharmacists, we also proactively trying to educate them so they understand what are the risks there and to be aware of. I personally think change is happening to our profession, and we've been expecting it. It's happening, and changes never are comfortable, and they are happening very quickly as well. So as a pharmacy students going on placements, feeling these changes, you would feel, it's loads of pressure and you feel overwhelmed. PDA sees this situation and tries to support the pharmacy students, and just thinking about the fact that there is someone, an expert one, that you could go to 24 hours, 7 days a week, and you can seek any legal advice or any thoughts of advices that you would feel that you necessary to carry on your practice. They are there for you. So I personally, throughout my degree, felt very comfortable thinking that, yes, there is someone that I could go to, and if necessary, they will give me the right advice. As a pharmacy student, we go on placements. We work in a multidisciplinary areas, environments, and we definitely need an indemnity insurance, and it's provided for free by PDA for students and pre-registered students. So it's a great opportunity for students and pre-registered trainees to take the advantage of it. Since working as a PDA representative and coming to Birmingham and to the headquarters and talking to senior committees, we hear different stories, and each time I hear these stories, I think, wow, what if this would happen to me? And so but just to give you some rough ideas, what they're like is some students get into trouble with their pharmacy school, during the examination or in a night out, and they don't know what to do, and they call PDA, and the PDA is there and they support them, and they make sure that if they are going through the fitness to practice hearing, they have the required support, as they are the young and fresh generation, and they are the vulnerable part of the profession. So PDA I am very grateful to PDA that they are actually supporting the students to understand the situation and take the right action, so they could rescue their future and their career if there is a chance. We hear loads of dangerous and life-changing events that are happening for students at different occasions. Not necessarily their fault, but it happens. You can't control it. But what is important is to take the right action and take the right advice from the experts. So PDA is there to provide the right advices should you necessary to have. Very importantly, it's a free insurance for students, which no one else does. Secondly, there are some vouchers and discounts that for certain shops and supermarkets you could use it for. And we support the students with loads of advices and emails that we sent around, and we try to make sure students understand what are the risks outside for them when they go to work or placements. So putting them all together, we try to safeguard the career for students in the best way we could do. We try to deliver what we promise, and we are very happy that, to say that students feeling way more safe. One of the examples that we had in our pharmacy school is that pharmacy students go on placements abroad and they need insurance, and we are providing this free insurance for pharmacy students, which is a bit of a saving for them that any students would love to have. That's a fair thing for pharmacy school, so they don't need to organize time-consuming process of getting people insured, and it's just we get them insured, they can check it, and it's a very convenient way of in having their students insured. The other things is indemnity insurance. Some pharmacy schools would perhaps see this as a very good a good way that they don't need to be worried about their students if they are in a tricky situation. And so other ways that PDA is benefiting pharmacy schools is running workshops in each pharmacy schools, which we try to educate the students about the fitness to practice and how this might affect their career. So as a representatives, we get to talk to students, and it's a very interactive role where it's really nice in a way. You try to promote what is good for them, and it's really nice to develop loads of personal skills that would be very helpful to you in your future job, and you could put it in the applications. I'm really grateful to be a representative at the PDA, and thanks to the PDA, I have gained lots of insight into what a pharmacist could go through, and what is the best to do for patients' care. And it's a really important and tricky subject, because sometimes we get in a situation that legally we can do something or we cannot do something, but ethically whether this is the right thing or not, it's where PDA will be having a really huge role in educating students. So thanks to PDA. The fact that PDA is doing something that no one else is doing is an important fact. and it's for the sake of our profession that PDA is taking loads of actions with regards to petitions, with regards to the regulations that are framing our profession. So it's very important that we would support this union, and we would help it, so we would make our voice delivered to the right regulatory body, and the right person can hear us and take the right action for us.
The PDA is a union. The role for students is they represent students in fitness practice cases that may arise from something that has happened on a hospital placement, a community placement that you've had over the summer, but it's just a union that provides liability insurance to just help out students and prevent them from getting into any trouble, basically. If your future was ever brought into disrepute, as it may, the PDA is there to stand up for you, because often it may be a large employer that's going against you, and the PDA is just there to provide a representation for you to prevent your future from becoming under disrepute. They're there to help your future and to prevent you from losing your license, basically. For example, if you're made to do something that you weren't supposed to do in a community pharmacy on a placement, as it were, you were made to do something you weren't comfortable doing, and say you made a mistake, but then it came back to the pharmacy and they're putting all the blame onto you, where would you stand? You've got to get representation, and the PDA is there for you to help you with the fitness practice case that might come from that, and it's helping the little man against big employers that have the power to overwhelm people, and it's just being able to help students be represented and make sure they're not bewildered in this big world of pharmacy. Whilst I'm very aware that the PDA, they've got to make money at the end of the day, that doesn't come across at all for the students' side of things. I've been a rep for 2 years now, and I've never had an issue with they're a company, they're trying to make money. I think what they're doing for students is just trying to help students out and make them aware of fitness to practice and make them aware of how their future might be affected if they don't have liability insurance. Because at the end of the day, if something does happen and you're not protected, then it's up to the elements. You don't know what's going to happen, and I think there's not a line that has ever been crossed, in my opinion, where my conflict of interest. I think it's a great organisation, and they're very good at making sure that their students' side of things is very separate from commercialisation and being about money. So the PDA it's a big organisation that can help protect an individual against big pharmacy corporations, especially in community, being able to stand up for the little man in a big world of large corporations with large legal departments. They're able to be they are a union that can represent the little man. That's what they do, and it's what they pride themselves on. So I think it's a very good organisation for representing people, especially when their employer is going against them, because often that could lead you into a difficult path. What do you do personally when your employer isn't going to represent you? Because sometimes they may, but a lot of times they probably just want to get rid of you, let's face it. So as a student, I think it's key that I have liability insurance in place. Now, whether that be with the PDA or any other organisation, although for the type of liability insurance that they offer, there is no other organisation that provides it, and for free. It's being part of an organisation that you know is trying to not only represent you, but to also further the profession for the better, and to try and stop things that would be disastrous, frankly, for the profession from happening. It's not a professional body, it's a union, but it is standing up for students, standing up for the little man, and preventing people from being taken over by big companies. Personally, as a representative for the PDA, they invite you to an annual conference, which is a great learning opportunity. Being as part of the in the School of Pharmacy, talking to cohorts is a great learning opportunity. Public speaking is something that I was not comfortable with before becoming a PDA rep, and now it's almost second nature. Being able to develop social media skills, it's such a small thing, but knowing that you have to be professional at all times and be wary of what you're posting on social media, and because it's out in the public domain. Being a rep, it doesn't take up too much time, but it's something great that employers will look on as showing that you've worked as part of a network of representatives, you've worked as part of a bigger company and communicated your ideas within a team of like-minded people, which it looks great. You not only get the student liability insurance, and once you go into your pre-reg year, you get a free liability insurance for that year, which is really valuable. But the PDA also provides learning opportunities. You can become a rep and go to the annual conference for representatives. Through newsletters, they provide learning opportunities. They're there for you if you need advice about anything. Through the schools of pharmacy, the reps will run events, fitness to practice, case studies. Representatives from PDA will come into your school and give workshops on case studies, and that can be really advantageous to get the fitness to practice idea in a real life situation, because often it's just words, but once you get it described to you in a case, it becomes very much more real, and you can relate to it a lot more, being presented to you in that format instead of just words like "this could affect you, it's fitness to practice." The PDA, Harry and Mark might come into your school, give workshops. They do it in the past. I mean, personally at my university, I know at Nottingham they come and speak to third years and run workshops on cases, run through case studies, which provides a really useful tool for students to be able to be given a real life example of a case. They provide advice to students which could be helpful for the schools. Purely having the student rep network is good because it allows students to get extra roles whilst they're a pharmacy student and have something that they can put on their CV to say that they've done and they've taken their own time to be a representative for an organisation. The skills that you gain from it, so communication skills, being part of a team, being kept up to date, sending off thousands of emails, it's all skills that are gained from being a PDA rep and trying to roll that out to all of the schools of pharmacy is something that should almost be necessary, because it's such a great opportunity for students to develop themselves. Going forward, working in primary care setting or secondary care, it really makes no difference. The PDA will be there for the extra layer of protection. An organisation might have their own liability insurance, but let's say it's the employer that's having a grievance with you. what layer of protection do you have then? You have no representation. The PDA is there to be able to protect you if the time should come when you have no other option and your organisation isn't willing to protect you and help you out, and you need a completely separate entity to act in your best interests and really help you and, you know, deal with your case personally. Being a member of the PDA as a student is completely free. It's no skin off anybody's bones. It's really hassle-free, and there is no reason why a student shouldn't sign up for it. It's just an extra layer of protection that should almost be required for a student. It's good to get it into a student's mindset from early on that you should be covered and that you should have liability insurance. And what the PDA offers for free actually is worth quite a lot, not just monetary, but for protecting your future as a pharmacist as well.
Okay, I'm Tom. I'm the Northern Region Student Coordinator for the PDA. The PDA is an organisation that puts the pharmacist first rather than companies or government. They always have the best interests of the individual at heart, and they advocate expanding roles for pharmacists. In an increasingly hostile environment for pharmacists to practice in, where anything could be around the corner, the PDA is there to stand up for the individual pharmacist rather than the employer. And they're always going to put the individual first and stand up for what is right and make sure that the individual is treated fairly. The PDA have a track record of standing up for individual pharmacists. They're very much about patient safety and allowing pharmacists to flourish and practice freely without the threat of litigation or restrictive legislation. In the interests of its members, the PDA has gone to court over the representation of individual pharmacists in spite of big corporations trying to prevent such representation. The PDA provide liability insurance, which is important when I'm on placement or in my job outside of university. And it's good to know that I am represented by the PDA should anything happen. You never know when something could be around the corner. As a student representative for the PDA, I've learned a lot about professionalism and about the legal and ethical dilemmas which pharmacists face through their work. The PDA reaches out to its student members by putting on events and conferences and runs workshops such as Fitness to Practice workshops. The PDA reaches out to its student members by putting on conferences and workshops, for example, a Fitness to Practice workshop. And that really does help students put into perspective how they ought to be behaving and makes them think twice about their conduct in university and outside. Pharmacy students can't really engage in the stereotypical student lifestyle of going out and getting drunk all the time, doing potentially embarrassing things. They do have to abide by the GPHC's code of conduct for pharmacy students, and so the PDA helps with that by promoting professionalism and educating students on what could happen in a Fitness to Practice hearing. Students might run into trouble on social media, they might run into trouble in paid work or on placement, and that can also have big ramifications for universities and for their reputation. The PDA provides free indemnity insurance for its student members, and that's absolutely invaluable because you never know when something might happen and you might need to call on the PDA to come and represent you in a Fitness to Practice hearing. And because that's free, you can't just sign up to the PDA, you're a member, and then you know it's always there. It's a bit like crashing your car and then you're going and taking out insurance. You wouldn't be able to do that, so it's best to be proactive rather than reactive. Placements might be a nightmare for universities to organise in terms of liability insurance. Universities might not be able to keep up to date on pharmacy premises and whether they are going to have indemnity cover for their students while on placement. So PDA membership for students removes that risk and that concern for all universities. Pharmacy students are still students. They will go out drinking, they might do something they regret, and indeed they might make a risque post on Facebook or Twitter, which might come back to bite them. The PDA is there to represent them should a fitness to practice hearing emerge because of that behaviour. When the responsible pharmacist regulations were being discussed in Parliament, the PDA was very vocal in that they didn't want it to be possible for a pharmacist to be in charge of a pharmacy from a remote location. There were suggestions that some large corporations might decide to employ a pharmacist to be in charge of several pharmacies at one time, which again the PDA blocked and made their voice heard on that issue.